If you're ready to unlock more better days, to take control of your health, to push past your limits and unleash your full potential, then you're in the right place. I'm your host, Dr. Jeremy Bettel. For over 2 decades, I've worked with elite athletes and high performers, helping them optimize their bodies, strengthen their minds, and recover from setbacks. Now I'm bringing that expertise to you through the Vitality Collective podcast. In each episode, we'll dive deep into the science, strategies, and real-world solutions you can apply right away. Whether it's enhancing your physical performance, avoiding or recovering from injury, sharpening your mental edge, or simply feeling your best every single day. With insights from top experts and thought leaders, this podcast is designed to help you take action, feel better, and live the life that you deserve. Welcome to the Vitality Collective podcast, where every day is vital. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Paul Hansma to talk about a topic that I think is probably the most complex and difficult to deal with, whether you're a practitioner or a patient, and that is chronic pain. Dr. Hansma's 5-year struggle with debilitating chronic pain led him to pioneer research in brain retraining for pain recovery. In this episode, we'll talk about the critical difference between tissue injury and chronic pain that lives in your brain, why surgery and physical therapy often fail to resolve persistent pain, and the practical tools that you can use today to interrupt that pain cycle. If you're someone who's been dealing with pain that won't resolve despite trying everything, or if you work with people who are in chronic pain, this conversation's for you. Let's get into it. Today, I'm so excited to welcome Dr. Paul Hansma to the show. I first came across Dr. Hansma's work when working with some chronic pain patients out there in Santa Barbara, and was actually able to refer 2 of my clients into his research studies on chronic pain, and the benefit they got was profound. One of the things, Dr. Hansma, that struck me when I started working in chronic pain is that pain has to be one of the most misunderstood problems in health and performance. I'd love to hear about your journey into this area of research, because it's a fascinating story.
It started when I started pruning a massive bougainvillea kind of tree that I had in my backyard. It had a thatch that was about 6 feet thick, and I decided it was finally time to massively prune it. And I started out, and by noon I was quite tired, so I hired a couple of guys to help me with a truck to put everything in. And I kind of made the mistake of continuing to work with them the whole afternoon. Anyway, by that evening, I was sore in my elbow in particular, because I was doing a lot of pruning over my head like this. So anyway, ended up not getting better right away, and so I went to the physician and got some cortisone shots, and then started physical therapy, and then my pain actually moved up to my shoulder, and then I started using the other shoulder instead, and the pain moved to the other shoulder. Anyway, long story short, 5 years later, I was in very intense chronic pain that was quite debilitating. I couldn't build things anymore. I had to sleep with 5 pillows, and of course, every time I wanted to turn over, I had to wake up, rearrange the 5 pillows, and couldn't do gardening, which I have mixed feelings about. But at any rate, so I've been doing physical therapy vigorously for 5 years. Every day I would do 15 minutes of my exercises, and sometimes it seemed like I was getting better, and then there'd be a relapse. And finally, a friend of a friend said, just try putting your arm in a sling for a month. And so I thought, well, this hasn't been working, so I'll try it. So I did. And I was used to working 15 minutes a day, on my problem. I wanted to work on my problem. And so I decided to start watching YouTube videos and reading books about chronic pain just to see what I could find. And a month later, my pain was almost gone. And by 2 months, it was totally gone. And now it's 5 years later, it's never come back. And so I was excited about this, and I wanted to share what I had learned with others. And I started talking with people in my office and helping some people recover from their chronic pain, and did a workshop at a local community, and then basically my own expertise is in building things, and so I started trying to think about whether there was something I could build that would help people recover from chronic pain. And so I've been working on building gadgets and testing them. So we just completed our eighth human study on chronic pain recovery, and little by little, we're kind of learning how to optimize the program. That's the goal, to try to make it as effective as possible.
I love that story, Paul, because I think that it will resonate so much with so many people. And I think everybody has experienced pain, right? You don't get to live in this world and not have experienced it. And so I think we know more than we do about it. Can you help us differentiate then between these kinds of pain and that journey you went through from an injury, legitimate physical tissue related injury, into what you're referring to as more chronic pain? What's the difference there?
The difference is what drives the pain. For ordinary pain that we're used to, the idea is you have pain stimulus. There you've got an injured tissue, or you have a damaged nerve. There's some pain stimulus that goes up to the brain, and the brain creates the experience of pain to protect you.
Right.
And the problem is that if the brain does anything repeatedly for a long period of time, it gets very good at it. Neural circuits to do that get established. And if you want to learn to ride a bike, after a while, it becomes very straightforward, and your brain will do it without you even thinking about it. Unfortunately, the same becomes true of pain. Your brain gets very accustomed to this. And to make matters much worse, what happens is people start getting afraid and anxious about their pain, especially as it persists beyond a normal healing time. They're like, wait a minute, what's wrong? Why am I not healing? Why am I still in pain? Is this going to be the rest of my life? What's going wrong? I don't understand. The doctors can't seem to help me. The physical therapy doesn't seem to be helping at this stage. I feel like, what's happening? What's going on? And so this kind of fear and anxiety, or you wake up in the morning and it's like, I feel a little tinge in my back, but I have an important interview with Jeremy this morning. And if this back gets any worse, I'm not going to be able to do it. Oh my God, it is getting worse. I mean, what am I going to do? So anyway, people get into this kind of fear and anxiety associated with sensation. And anytime you associate emotion with perception, it becomes more interesting to the brain. If you see a work of art and it excites you emotionally, you're more interested in that work of art. In the case of the brain, once you get fear and anxiety associated with sensation, it becomes fascinating for the brain. The brain is just drawn to that because the brain is trying to protect you. And this seems like something it's an indication of protection is needed. And so the problem is then that you get neural circuit paths in your brain that just run by themselves. And they can be triggered by very mild stimulus that's actually safe, but they get triggered by that, and they just have a life of their own. They generate the experience of pain. So even though the tissue heals, the pain does not go away. And the pain, unfortunately, feels exactly the same. It feels exactly the same as physical pain. And this is the big problem, that it transitions, say, in the case of a back injury, it transitions from pain due to signals from nerve cells to pain due to patterns in the brain seamlessly. You can't tell that it's happened. Your back hurts. A year later, it still hurts. It's very logical to assume it still hurts after a year for the same reason that it hurt at the beginning of the year. And unfortunately, that's just not the case.
And that's a really difficult distinction, isn't it? Because when I talk to people about chronic pain, and I would define it as being, if beyond tissue healing, right? If we can see a clean healed scar and all that tissue is healed and we're able to move and work and it's still painful, that there's a distinct difference there. That's where I think that separation has happened.
Yes.
But people don't love hearing that either, because then they start thinking, well, you're telling me it's in my head, i.e., I'm making it up. So how do you help people understand that that's a distinction and it's real, but it's something different, and there's a different way to get out of that kind of pain?
The other part of my research is research in neural systems, dissociated neural systems on big multi-electrode arrays, like this one right here, where we take neurons and we put them onto this multi-electrode array. It has thousands of electrodes, too small for you to see, and we measure their activity. And what happens is, even with no input whatsoever, they get into repetitive firing patterns. And these repetitive firing patterns just go with a life of their own. The point is, that's what's happening in the brain. It's not you're doing something wrong. It's not that you have, your bad thoughts, or you're psychologically sick, or you're disturbed. It's just much simpler than that. It's just a repetitive maladaptive neural firing pattern. It's nothing to feel guilty about. This is just what large collections of neurons do. They get into these repetitive firing patterns, and they just stay in these repetitive firing patterns until those are changed. And so no guilt required. It's just we have to change the tissue is healed. Now we have to change the repetitive maladaptive neural firing patterns.
And is that what you would refer to as sensitization?
Sensitization is a part of is a part of it. Sensitization is a part of it. Sensitization applies to the idea that if you feel a small stimulus, you'll overreact to it, like the volume control is turned up too much. And so that's definitely a part of it. But the pain can occur even without the sensation at all. Just anxiety and fear alone can get you into this pain loop. And so it's sensitization, anxiety, and fear together that create that stabilize these maladaptive neural firing patterns that create the experience of pain.
It's fascinating that to me, because now we start getting into so many different areas and reasons that people might have pain. So maybe it is you were in the garden and you hurt your elbow, and that causes the chronic pain cycle. A gentleman that I sent into your study, he woke up one morning and 3 years later was diagnosed with CRPS, but and that's complex regional pain syndrome for those who aren't familiar. What would be the distinction there with people who have these very complex disorders that they just sort of wake up and, maybe in this gentleman's case, his foot stopped working and was just searing pain, bright purple, like how is there a differentiation there?
Yeah. The thing is, what I know how to do and what I know how to help people is to stop these maladaptive firing patterns. The origin of the maladaptive firing patterns, people can have PTSD from just one incident, right? In a war, there's some traumatic incident, and it establishes maladaptive firing patterns that can be triggered by just a loud noise when they dive under the desk. So these maladaptive firing patterns, most often, they come from an injury that maintains, the signal for a period of time. And so the brain, as I said, gets used to creating the experience of pain. But it can also happen that some triggering event, will start these maladaptive firing patterns. I worked with one woman who had daily persistent headaches, something like that. It's an innocuous sounding name, but a horrific thing, where she'd never had a headache in her life. And one day she woke up with a headache, and she's had a bad headache ever since. Now, in her case, I worked with her for some sessions, and at the end, she said that it felt like she had been carrying a 60-pound backpack, and now it was I forget what she said, 30-pound backpack. And so, it never totally went away, but it was less. And this is another situation that happens where a person does have some, like arthritis. like arthritis. They
Mm-hmm.
do have arthritis. I mean, that was my other situation. About 20 years ago, I went to the doctor because my hand was hurting on my thumb,
Right.
and he took X-rays and said, "Of course, your hand's hurting. You have osteoarthritis. It's
Right.
bone on bone or almost bone on bone." And he said, "So of course you have pain." And he said, "The bad news is there's nothing we can do about it, and it's only going to get worse. But the
Mm-hmm.
good news is it'll get worse slowly." And so that's what happened um, for about 10 years until I had this whole bougainvillea pruning thing and retrained my brain from that. And as a result, my thumbs no longer hurt as well. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and like right now, I was just messing with my thumb, and so I can feel it a little bit. But normally, I'm not conscious of my thumb. But I'm aware that it's not 100%. If I try to open a jar, that's too hard to open, and so on. But I don't have an extra layer of pain on top of that. So
Yes,
very
yes, yes.
often you can have a certain amount of, let's say, appropriate nociceptive pain, but then your brain can pile on top of that.
Yeah, yeah. You know
You
what?
can trigger these circuits, and it's much worse than it has to be. And your goal is to get it
Yeah.
down to.
There's a really interesting caveat there, just in communication around pain as well. And I think the medical system has done a really poor job of this. When we were with athletes and a guy would have pain, we would be very judicious about going and getting an image. Like, did we do an MRI of a back or an X-ray of a hand? Because the image is probably going to show something. But you and I might have the exact same presentation of osteoarthritis, and you have pain and I don't. But I bet if we X-ray my hand and tell me I've got osteoarthritis and it's going to hurt, I bet it hurts. Right?
You're absolutely right. Medical imaging, especially imaging of the back, has been a unfortunate situation. So many people who come into my studies, they know exactly what's wrong with them. They know why they're having pain. They're having pain because they have a compressed disc, or they're pain because they have a bulging disc between L4 and L5, or
Right.
they have this. They'll tell me what disc is. They'll tell me exactly what the problem is, and that's why they have pain. But then I show them charts people that have exactly that same condition and no pain. I mean, by the time you get to my age, I'm 79, I'm almost 80. By the time you get to my age, 93% of people who have no pain have disc degeneration. And so you're
Yeah.
very wise to, be judicious about this because, as you say, pretty much anyone, you're going to find an abnormality.
Yeah.
And if you get locked into the idea that the abnormality is causing your pain, you're locked into a hopelessness.
Yeah.
That although even there, I saw some really interesting data recently that I forget the percentage, but a high percentage of bulging discs actually resorb on their own within a year.
Yes. Yes.
But yes, I think you're very wise to be, cautious about medical imaging, because I think medical imaging has resulted in a lot of people not
Yeah.
understanding the real source of their pain.
Yeah. Yeah. We saw it in the research around Major League Baseball players. And something like 70% of them, I don't know the exact number, around 70% had labral tears in their throwing arm. 70% of them are still playing.
Oh, yeah.
Right? There's no problem.
Yeah.
But we actually went through in the NHL, one team actually started doing prophylactic surgeries based on medical imaging. Right? And so people getting into these injury, re-injury, surgery, pain loops where I've had people come to me 5, 6, 7 surgeries in to try and solve this pain problem. And they've become so deconditioned because of the surgeries and the rehabs where they've just got less and less and less strong and fit and structurally sound, that I just think that in itself helps to drive further and further pain. And where people become fragile, not to mention what are we going to do with life after the pain once we get through it? Like, we still need a functioning body. So it's a really interesting and difficult problem for people to deal with in this present system.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I, I always feel sorry for people who come into my studies with, 5, 6 surgeries because I know it's going to be extra hard for them.
Yeah.
It's going to be extra hard for them.
Yeah.
It's But
And so,
fortunately, even after 5, 6 surgeries, people can recover.
mhm. so let's talk about that then. It's interesting, isn't it? Because there are many tools that we think we have available, and there are a lot that are difficult to actually get people to consider. And I'd like to get into the rewiring or the breakdown of those circuits that have started firing together. What is our path out of this, and what are the tools that are available to us?
Great question. Yeah. Well, the problem is fear and anxiety associated with sensation. And so the cure is reducing fear and anxiety associated with sensation. And what we do in our studies is we use the gadget that my group has come up with and that we've been testing to help people lower their anxiety. This is it's a nice, well, I'll show you the commercially available. We've got current prototypes that we're working on, but I'll show you the one that's already available with one of my former students who started a company that I'm not affiliated with, so I'm not getting any financial benefit by showing you this device. But it's this one. You see, the lights are getting brighter and dimmer. Yeah, there's yours. All right, the lights are getting brighter and dimmer, and I help people learn to warm their hands with their brain, which helps people get out of sympathetic nervous system activation. And I incentivize them to do that twice a day or a month. And so that's the part where they get confidence. Go ahead.
I just want to jump in there because you threw in a phrase there that sounds really flippant. I teach people to warm their hands with their brain.
Yeah. So basically,
talk us through that. How do we do that? Well, I've got my calm stone here.
So basically what happens is when you become anxious and go into fight or flight, what happens is the body withdraws blood from non-muscle tissues like your hands and puts it into the muscles so you can fight or flee. Now, the only way that the brain can warm your hands is by restoring blood flow to your hands. And the only way it can do that is getting you out of fight or flight. And how you get out of fight or flight is by relaxing. And so there's various techniques for relaxing. The one that the Calm Stone facilitates is slowing your breathing way down. So this is getting brighter. You breathe in while it's getting brighter. And then as it gets dimmer, you breathe out. And as you can see, Jeremy, I'm telling your listeners, but it's a very slow out breath. And now this is getting brighter again for an in breath. And basically, people follow that breath pacer. And to follow the breath pacer is the first way to do it. There are other techniques that they can try. For example, another one is putting the other hand over the heart and saying, I am safe. And trying to really feel that whatever's happened in the past, whatever they fear for the future, at this moment, they are safe. Right here, right now, holding this Calm Stone in this room, I am safe. And to try to really feel that I am safe. Or speaking to the inner child, you are safe. You are safe. I'll give you one third one. A third one is to say, my arms and legs are heavy and warm. My heartbeat is calm and regular. This is called autogenic training. This is the one I actually use myself. My arms and legs are heavy and warm. My heartbeat is calm and regular. So people can use whichever one they want, and they can tell how well it's working by the changing of the light colors. Like, see, now this light has changed to blue, which means my hands are getting warmer because as you go through the spectrum, as you get toward purple, and your hands are getting warmer. And so people can see how well whatever they're doing is working for them, and they can
Right.
use whatever works for them. And so
Right.
it's a way to, I mean, everybody has techniques for relaxing, but this is kind of quantified relaxing. It's
Yeah. Yeah.
quantified.
Yeah.
You can tell what's working for you. And so that's the anxiety part. As far as the fear part goes, a lot of it is just education, just like we've been talking, realizing that just because you're sore doesn't mean you're unsafe. You can be sore but safe, sore but safe, sore but safe. And this is a very useful phrase for people. In fact, people in the chronic pain recovery programs, they tell me the two most useful things for them. Number one is don't talk about your pain. Number two is sore but safe. Sore but safe, sore but safe. And don't talk about your pain is another one. The problem that happens is people get to talking about their pain with others, and it kind of gives this pain this reality, and it's a conversation topic. And especially there's some very unfortunate chronic pain support groups, which I think do exactly that. They get together and a fibromyalgia support group and like, oh my God, this week, on Wednesday, I had to pick up my kid from daycare and I was hurting all over, but I managed to get in the car. I managed to get there. I picked him up. I brought him home. I collapsed in the bed for a little while, but then I was able to make him dinner. And the other person says, you think you got problems. Let me tell you about my week.
Right.
So you don't want to talk about pain is what, the idea is, think about if you want somebody asks you about pain, because you have this conversation every time they see you, they're like, oh, how are you doing now? Are you feeling any better? Tell them about what you're learning in this course instead of telling them about your pain. I'll guarantee you they'll be happier to hear that. And so things like that, don't talk about your pain because it gives it this reality and makes it anyway, don't talk about your pain. And then learning, just watching all sorts of videos that give you the same message that I've been giving here, that just because you have pain doesn't mean you're unsafe. And you are safe, you're fine, you're okay. Those are the basic tools.
And you said something earlier, and it's a phrase I hear a lot, and it's people taking ownership of it. My pain. I think that it's like it's a pet, my bad back, my bad knee, right?
It becomes part of their personality. It becomes part of their character. It can become kind of, I am a person with chronic pain.
With regards to talking about the pain, it was something, again, we did in sport, but something you really highlighted to me in one of our previous conversations. And we would get the athlete to a point in their rehabilitation, if they were coming back from some sort of a fracture, a muscle injury or something, or a surgery, there would become a point where I would sit the athlete down and tell them, you are now in a phase where you are a completely healthy human being who is just out of shape. So now we are just reconditioning you. And I would ban the staff from asking them how their knee felt, because I felt like it set up that pattern where they were seeking it. Oh, if I do that, I can make my knee hurt. If I do, I can feel it when I really stretch here. They hadn't talked about it until you asked them. And so I sort of intuitively, we came to that, but then you brought it up again recently. And I feel like with my current clients, it was a really powerful message, because these are more chronic pain versus acute rehabs, to not ask them as much, because I had been guilty of that. Every session, how was the week? How are you feeling? How did you respond to the last workout? How are we doing? So it's really interesting, even as a practitioner, having that awareness. What would be an alternative? If there's some therapists here.
I'm so glad you asked that.
What else do we talk about?
So glad you asked that. By the way, just as an example of, I've been holding the constant, and after you get, after you use this for a while, it becomes a conditioned response. So see, mine is now more purple lights. It was blue lights, now it's purple lights. It's become a conditioned response for me. I can just pick the thing up, and I don't even have to say, I don't have to regulate my breathing or do anything. It's become a conditioned response that I relax when I pick the thing up. So like, for instance, I use it when I go to bed every night. But that's an aside. Get back to your very important point. Instead of saying, how's your knee? What do you say? Well, I'm very excited. I have a student in my group named Kelly, and we were talking about this problem. She's an undergraduate student, Kelly Emmy. And basically she said, why don't we talk about comfort? Now, comfort is defined as a state of physical ease free from pain or constraint. Comfort, a state of physical ease free from pain or constraint. And this is just what we want, don't we, Jeremy? This is what we want for our people. We want them to be in a state of physical ease free of pain and constraint. This is what we want for people. And there's a principle of measurement. Measure what you want to increase. Well, this is what we want to increase. So I'm starting to ask people in the last study, I would ask them, have you had examples this week where you felt comfort in a situation where it surprised you, that you felt comfort and you were walking and you felt comfortable walking, or you were running and you felt comfortable running, or you were doing some activity which you were afraid of in the past maybe, but you were comfortable doing this. And so I'm trying to change my focus, and I'm just starting this, but I'm really changing the focus to comfort instead of pain.
And I do love that, because then we can start to explore what was the environment, what was it about that circumstance. So I was really calm. I was laughing with friends. I was in a group. I was in the garden, doing my favorite thing. Helping people identify the circumstances under which that comfort was occurring can help us craft an environment that will be more supportive of their comfort.
Beautiful, beautiful point.
And what about the people that, you start talking about, okay, I am safe, and they roll their eyes. Come on, doc, I hurt my back. We don't need to get into my childhood trauma. How do we talk to those people and make this something that is a bit more acceptable to that individual who is adamant that, it's the Western medical, they're type A, they're, hard hitting?
Well, if they're Western medical, hard A, hard hitting, I will refer them to the primary literature. If they're bright enough to do this, I'll send them to Yoni Asher's Journal of American Medical Association paper about pain reprocessing therapy. I'll show them, look, you're hard hitting. You want the truth. Look at this. Look at this article. I mean, this works. We're not talking woo-woo here. We're talking something that works. We're talking about something that was in a big controlled study published in the Journal of American Medical Association. Find out the facts. Find out the facts. This is why I have people look at all these YouTube videos and read articles and stuff like this. If you have someone who wants the truth and wants to be hard hitting and exact, well, go ahead. This is great. This is great.
Right.
I totally encourage you, because what you find out will help you. Once you get away from thinking, the whole thing is that chronic pain is caused by sensation, anxiety, fear, sensation. It's this loop. Sensation, anxiety, fear, sensation, anxiety, fear, sensation, anxiety, fear. And people who come to me, they've spent all their time trying to reduce sensation, right? They've been trying to heal the body, trying to reduce sensation. And after that hasn't worked, after I did my 5 years of physical therapy trying to reduce sensation, right? And that hadn't worked, I say, we're going to go the other half of this. We're going to try reducing the anxiety and fear. And I can show you journal articles that works, and this is what we're going to focus on, this half of the picture.
Right.
And it's not crazy woo-woo. This is proven science.
One of the approaches you've touched on there that I've tried to decouple sensation from anxiety and fear by keeping the individual moving and sort of showing them that it's not correlated. But I have run into problems with that, where we give them a stimulus and it causes more pain. And so where do we go with reintroducing movement? You mentioned right at the start with your story in pain, you went right to a sling. And immediately the practitioner in me was like, no, that's the worst thing you could do. Immediately.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, isn't it? Because you do have to break that cycle at some point. And so it's one of the tools maybe we can throw in is some complete rest, but then how do we get started again?
Yeah, that's I know that it's strange and very counterintuitive.
Yeah.
Because we also know that inactivity contributes to chronic pain. Inactivity, lying in bed is not a good idea, and inactivity contributes to chronic pain. But that said, sometimes, like in my case, it's necessary to get the person in a situation where they can't blame what they did physically for the sensation they're feeling.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
by the end of that month, if my elbow would hurt, I would say, there was one time toward the end of the month, I just sitting there and my elbow started hurting again, where the pain had started. And I found one part of my brain telling my brain, you've got to be kidding me. Cut that out. And the pain went away right away. It was just quite interesting.
Right.
It's like I told myself there is no physical excuse for this just coming up right now. My arm was in a sling. There is no physical excuse. This has got to be generated in my brain, and just cut it out. And so and I know it's tricky with athletes where you want to maintain condition and so on. And that's why I'm glad I don't have your job, because I recognize how tricky it is, because you want the athlete to maintain their athletic abilities and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, you don't want them to have a physical excuse for what they're feeling. You don't want them to have a good reason to believe it's a physical problem.
Yeah, that's why I like to use the term tools, because none of these are solutions. It's not like, okay, just go sit in your chair. We'll just put you in a whole body cast the rest of your life and you'll never feel pain again. I always said in sport, like we could prevent every injury in sport if we just stopped playing sport. But that's not the point, is it? Right. So
that's right.
I think periodic use of these different modalities and different techniques and tools, where appropriate, I think we mustn't rule any of them out, which I've certainly been guilty of in the past, of saying, no, we should never just rest or something like that. So the other piece is then, okay, as we start helping people break the fear and like you said, the sore but safe. Okay, we just started up again. We might trigger a little bit of pain. It should go up and then come back down within a couple of days. And have you found an educational approach to that movement piece that's been effective?
Yeah, this is an area that I really haven't looked into much, Jeremy. I dipped my toes in it, and and got burned. Frankly, I had been using this book, The Way Out. Way Out. I guess we're reverse, right, left. But anyway, The Way Out. I had been using that, and I decided that book has nothing about getting people moving, nothing at all. And so I decided, well, I'll try to continue keeping the content of that book in my course, but I'd like to start encouraging them to move. And so I'm going to go to the, Lorimer Mosley and explain pain protectometer, because he's, a hero of physical therapists, and he has the idea of how you get people moving and stuff like that. And so I'm going to go to this book and try to incorporate gentle movement into my course. Absolute disaster. People did much, much worse. Much, much worse. I ended up saying I just couldn't believe it. That was 2 studies with the Calm Stone. I ended up replicating that with the new Calm Wand. Same thing. This book does not work nearly as well as this book. And this book is trying to get the movement going. So at this point, I'm kind of more inclined to say to people, look, you've been doing physical therapy. That's great. I'm not talking to athletes. You have a different problem. But I'm telling people, why don't you just, take a vacation for 1 month while you're doing this course? Just take a vacation from physical therapy for 1 month. Or if you can convince your physical therapist to give you exercises that cause no soreness whatsoever,
Yeah.
then you can continue. But I do not want you doing any physical therapy that creates any soreness. I used to think, okay, because my physical therapist friends tell me, well, it's okay if you get up to a level 4 on your own. It's okay if you get up to a level 6 with the physical therapist. Just as long as the pain goes away within a day, you're
Right.
fine. And so I believed that.
Mhm.
And I kind of said that. Disaster.
Mhm. So
So
when
yeah.
when do you feel that it is appropriate to
To do
get
what?
moved? Do we got to move? Do we get out of pain? Do we have a
Hey,
significant subsidence
everybody
and then go?
starts moving once they get out of pain. What I found is
Yeah.
you do not have to encourage people to move. Once they
Yeah.
get out of pain, some of them went hiking in Patagonia, another
Yeah.
one went to Machu Picchu.
Yeah.
Basically once they get out of pain, they start moving. You don't have to tell them to start moving.
Yeah. That's such a beautiful point, isn't it? Because I think the human condition really is to move.
Yes.
And once that's been removed from you, it's something you've taken for granted so much.
Yeah.
And I think once that's been removed and then you're released from that, it's the first thing you want to do, isn't it?
Absolutely. And they go
Yeah.
on trips. They start doing all this activity with no encouragement whatsoever.
Mm-hmm. Some of the gentlemen that I've dealt with, they've been in this cycle for a decade longer. I'm sure you've seen worse.
Sure.
They are in this constant cycle of trying to attribute it to something. Keep going back to the pain doc, keep getting a shot, keep getting a surgery, and basically becoming disabled.
Yes.
So frail.
Yes.
But the pain is actually getting worse and worse and worse. Well, how do we talk to that person about breaking that cycle of seeking? Because intelligent people will naturally try and create cause and effect, right? So how do we get through to that person who is still stuck in the cycle of seeking a solution? And it must be this, and if we do this surgery, we'll fix it. How do we talk to that individual?
I like to just say, look, you've been following this path for many years, right? How's it working for you? This is a different path with lots of scientific evidence. This is what I attribute your pain to, why don't you try it for a month? Give it a try, see what happens. And, we've got a lot of history of success, give it a try. You've been trying to do it on the basis of trying to cure a physical problem. Again, this whole thing I showed them, the sensation, anxiety, fear. You've been trying to reduce your sensation with surgery, with drugs, with all sorts of things, and it just hasn't been working. It hasn't worked. So why keep doing something that's not working? Why keep doing something that's not working? Why not try something totally different?
Yeah, it brings to mind for me just a whole new model of service where it's like people don't know what to do or what you are doing for them if they aren't moving. Like if people come to me to fix their shoulder,
Yeah.
I'm thinking about a whole new program that I'm developing in my mind for. Actually, we're not training yet.
Yeah.
Right? You're not injured. We don't need to work out of an injury here.
Well, one possibility for you or others in your situation, I just took the pain reprocessing therapy course. They have a lot of courses to train, people to do it. Mine was like about 2 or 3 hours of content a week for a month. Very effectively done. But basically, they would train you how to help people reduce their anxiety and fear associated with pain. Systematically, and you can go to various levels. But someone I talked to at who was head of a physical therapy lab in Arizona, he said, his physical therapists now are spending more than half the time talking to people, not leading them in exercises. And I just talked at Cottage Rehab Hospital, and some of the physical therapists were saying to me just before my talk, well, the problem is, right, that we have certain objectives and we have limited time, and there's certain things we're supposed to do and checklists and billing codes. And, I'd love to do this, but, I feel very constrained. But then during the talk, one of them, a senior one, said, no. And he says, there is a billing code. And I think there's some kind of pain education billing code that they can bill with. He said, and you can talk to people and bill it according to this pain education billing code. And basically, I think the idea is for physical therapists to gradually move more and more to dealing with all aspects of physical pain, not just the physical. I think physical therapists, are in an ideal situation because they already have a billing structure, and I now found out they're even billing codes. And they have a billing structure. It's perfect. People come to them repeatedly once a week. Spend 40 minutes. I mean, this is an ideal situation for retraining people out of chronic pain. They're set up to do it, but at the moment, they're focusing on the body. I think the way of the future is that they will become trained to deal with both parts of the problem.
That's what I'm hoping, is that this isn't a pendulum. I think we add to, and we get more tools. We don't say, okay, let's forget that and go over here, and now we're this, and because we'll just keep doing this for the side to side for the rest of time. I think the more we can expand and diversify our skill set to include this, understand it. For me, it's been a huge eye opener just on reimagining the process of rest as it pertains to pain, and incorporating that into a formal program. I think it is going to be profound for the people that I work with, and anyone else who's in pain or is a practitioner working with people in pain. So, Paul, I thank you so much for the information that you've shared with us today. It's been such a rich conversation. And as we come up on time, I like to give people every episode 3 takeaways that they can build into their life today. Then maybe they don't have access to you or I directly, but what are 3 things that people could take away from this conversation and be able to build into their life, some actions they can take today in order to improve their pain?
3 things. That's a good question. Let me think. I would say, buy and read the book The Way Out, which I'm also no financial connection with that. It's a really good book. It's not that expensive on Amazon. It's a very good book. It's very helpful for people. That would be one thing they could do. Another thing they could do would be to go to the YouTube Chronic Pain Science channel. If they just enter in Chronic Pain Science channel on YouTube, I've curated a lot of videos there from leading experts in the world, including the author of that book. And they can find videos there that speak to them. And the third thing is, if they really want to be serious at this point, they could contact the Pain Reprocessing Therapy Center. Just enter Pain Reprocessing Therapy. There's a center in LA that's very good. I got training there. I liked it. They offer a lot of variety of different kinds of training. I think they're good. I think so. Those are 3 things a person could do to move toward dealing with the anxiety fear part as opposed to the sensation part.
Yeah. And I think those techniques that you've shared with us around reducing anxiety and fear would be particularly pertinent for people as well. Just the calm stone, the breath work, the tactile, the sensation of I'm safe. These things that we would consider to be in this woo-woo realm that are very, very rigorously studied and well researched. And your message earlier about stop talking about pain. I just think I think there's so powerful and could be life changing for people. So Well, where can people get in touch with you? You mentioned the YouTube channel where they can follow along. Can you explain a bit more about the study that you run? That's what are we on, 8 now?
Yeah, I've finished 8. They can go to, if they just enter Hansma Lab into a search, they'll get to the Hansma Lab website. And on the Hansma Lab website, there's information about where they can apply to become part of a study.
Right.
We're not running a study this quarter. This quarter, I'm running an honors seminar in chronic pain, educating some young, bright students here at the university. But next quarter, we'll run another study.
Right.
If they want to get in contact with our work, that would be where to go, Hansma Lab.
Wonderful. Well, everything you've referred to here, we'll put into the show notes, and we'll make sure there's links and things that people can follow really easily to follow along with you. Again, Paul, thank you so much for your time. I've really enjoyed this conversation and have learned so much myself. I feel like I'm a better practitioner for it. So thanks so much.
I enjoyed talking with you. Thanks for asking me.
What an incredible conversation with Dr. Paul Hansma. Personally, I learned so much as a practitioner just from going through that conversation myself, and so I hope you feel the same. Here are 3 key things that you can take away from today's episode. Number 1, buy and read The Way Out by Alan Gordon. It's an accessible, evidence-based book that explains chronic pain and provides a framework for recovery. This is one of the most practical first steps that you can take to understand what's happening in your brain. Number 2, explore the Chronic Pain Science YouTube channel, where curated videos from leading experts offer different perspectives and explanations. Find the videos and experts that speak personally to you, as connection with the material matters for learning and implementation. Number 3, if you're ready to take serious action, consider contacting the Pain Reprocessing Therapy Center or similar qualified practitioners who can guide you through the process of reducing fear and anxiety associated with pain. Professional guidance can accelerate your progress and provide accountability. If this episode resonated with you, the best way to support the show is to follow us wherever you listen to your podcasts, leave a rating or a review, and share this with somebody that you think could benefit from this message. It makes a real difference in helping us reach more people who could benefit from these conversations. You can stay connected with us on Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube at Vitality Collective Performance, where we share additional insights, behind-the-scenes content, and updates on upcoming episodes. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you next time.